Hello, and welcome to Steffoodle. I am, unsurprisingly, Steph. And I know I said I'd cool it on collabs this year, but technically this one is from last year, so this was a Met Gala collab hosted on Instagram by Mr. Sprocket Imaginarium, and it was originally going to be due in September, but got delayed in 2020, and yeah. But we're here now. We could either recreate one of the looks from a previous Met Gala, or create our own. I knew immediately which dress I wanted to make. It's from the 2018 Met Gala, which had the theme of heavenly bodies. I saw Zendaya as Joan of Arc, and that dress has not left my mind since. After making Borealis, though, I was really burnt out, and I almost dropped out of this collab. But then, YouTube darling Rachel Maxey made this same dress, and I was pumped again. So let's get started. Way back in late July. You may recognize this Nephra denial here, as I stole her forearms to create Nadi's lower legs a few videos ago. But I was able to get her new arms from eBay, which are from the first gen Nephra, whereas this doll is from the Boo-York line. The arms have a gold shimmer, while the rest of the doll has a sort of silvery blue shimmer, but she'll have sleeves, so I'm not too worried about that color disparity. I tied the hair up and cut it as close to the scalp as I could, as it's nice and I want to save it. Then I put her in a plastic bag and dunked her in a mug of boiling water to soften the vinyl of her head so I can remove it easily. Then I scraped out all of the remaining hair and glue from inside the head with a screwdriver and removed it with tweezers through the neck hole. There was an obscene amount of gunk in this head. I used acetone-free nail polish remover to wipe away the tattoo on her upper arm, and pure acetone to remove the factory paint on her head. And now she's all clean.
6 months later.
Okay, it's closer to 5, but yeah, it's been some time. I've got a silicone mat to work on now. It's so much easier to clean. Now where were we? Ah yes. I painted her scalp brown to prepare for the reroute. I gave it 2 coats of paint and then 2 coats of matte Mod Podge to help keep it from chipping, which I forgot to do on Borealis. Wah, wah. I'll be using yarn in 2 different shades of brown. I started by wrapping the yarn around a piece of cardboard, and then I cut it to make a bunch of strands that are all the same length. I did this for both shades. In photos, I honestly couldn't tell if Zendaya's hair was more red or more brown, but I had these colors on hand, so I figured I could make them work. Then I began unraveling the yarn into its individual strands. Once that's done, I can start the reroute. I thread a strand of yarn through my doll needle, then I poke it through the head through one of the existing holes and out through the neck hole. Then I tie a couple of knots in the end of the yarn and pull it taut from the outside. Lather, rinse, repeat many, many, many times. And here's the result. Honestly, I actually really like how her hair looks now. I really want to make a doll one day with this hair texture. But to get that wavy bob, I'm going to have to brush the yarn out and straighten it. So I carefully brushed out the yarn with a pet brush, section by section, and used my hair straightener as I went. And now she looks like this. Time to wrap her hair up to protect it and get ready for the paste up. I usually spray heads with 2 coats of Mr. Super Clear to start, and again every so often along the way, waiting for 30 minutes for each coat to dry. Make sure to wear a respirator and spray outside and let it dry in a well-ventilated area because MSC is toxic AF. I started sketching out her eyes and eyebrows with light brown pencils before jumping in with darker brown. I use chalk pastels to give her blush and shading. To prep them, I use an X-Acto knife and scrape some of the pastel into this cool ceramic dish I have, which is meant to hold eggs, I think, but it works so well for this purpose. I had a hard time building up the whites in her eyes, so I used some acrylic ink to make them pop. I used a lighter pastel shade to highlight her face and add dimension. It looks super light right now, but the next layer of sealant will knock that right back, so don't worry. I wasn't really trying to make a true portrait doll, as I don't do super realistic face-ups, but I wanted to capture Zendaya's natural makeup and thick brows here, and I think I succeeded in the end. Just add some eye shines and the face-up is done. Time to tackle the armor. I made patterns on graph paper for each piece, referencing the proportions of the doll itself and also Rachel Maxey's video showing her construction process. It was super helpful. I started from the top with the neck piece and worked my way down. I was originally going to use craft foam, but it was too thick since this is fashion armor and not functional armor, so I ended up using some faux leather instead. And, this is where I lost some footage for the first time ever in my YouTubing career. But I filmed a short reenactment to get you up to speed. The part of faux leather will be played by some cereal box cardboard here. First, I trace and cut out my sample pieces, 2 from the shoulders and 3 from the belt. One step that I took that I will skip here is coating the back of the pieces with Mod Podge. The back of the faux leather is a little fuzzy, and I didn't really want that, and I thought the Mod Podge would give it a little more structure as well, so that's what I did. I used 3D fabric paint to add raised details on all of the pieces. Then I wait for it to dry, for 4 hours. Once the 3D paint is dry, I give it 2 base coats of silver and 1 coat of Mod Podge just to seal all that in. Next, I'll go over how I connected each of the pieces. For the shoulder pieces, I used silver embroidery thread. I cut a length of thread and separate out 1 strand to thread my needle with. Then I add stitches here and here, like so. And it looks like this. I did this with all the shoulder pieces, starting from the bottom and going up. This technique seemed a bit too bulky to use for the belt pieces, so I used an all-purpose glue instead. Again, starting from the bottom and working to the top, I would add a stripe of glue along the top of the lower piece, and add the upper piece to it, leaving it to dry upside down before moving on to the next level. This glue gets everywhere every time I use it, no matter what I do. And there we have it. I also sewed the collar onto the neck piece and added raised edges with the 3D fabric paint to it and the waistband of the belt. And I think you're all up to speed now. Back to our regular programming, already in progress. As with the other armor pieces, I gave the neck piece and the waistband 2 coats of silver paint and 1 coat of matte Mod Podge to seal that in. Once dry, I sewed snap fasteners onto the collar and a hook and eye closure onto the waistband. Then I began gluing the belt armor pieces onto the waistband, starting with the pieces that will go in the back, as they'll be at either end of the waistband. Then I glued on the front piece. This bit is curved, so I started by gluing the center only. Then I could glue each side and manipulate the waistband to follow the curve. I stitched the shoulder armor to the neck piece at 2 points on each side, one in front and one in back. When coming back through the neck piece, I made sure the thread went through the same hole it had come through, and tied both ends of the thread in a knot on the other side. This will hold the armor in place, but will also allow it to swivel, so she'll be able to raise her arms. And here's how the armor looks so far. I glued on individual sequins to the connection points on the neck piece. Then it was time to add all the rivet details. The nozzle of the 3D paint was actually too large for this, so I ended up squeezing out some of the paint and using the tip of a bamboo skewer to make all the teeny raised dots on the belt and the neck piece. This bit is at 5 times speed right now, by the way. I also added a dot of 3D paint on top of each of the sequins. While I wait for all that to dry, I'll work on the shoes. I'm using these first wave Nephra shoes, mainly for the peep toe. To make them look a bit less Egyptian and a bit more in the Catholicism theme, I made the cobras into generic snakes. Then I gave them a base coat of black paint, then 2 coats of silver paint. I also gave the belt and the neck piece a fresh coat of silver. Then I began giving everything a wash with watered down black paint to bring out the texture on the faux leather, but also to add some shading and weathering to give it more dimension. I gave the shoes a wash with black paint as well. Then I added back in some highlights with silver before sealing everything in again with Mod Podge. 2 layers on the shoes and 1 layer on the belt and neck piece. Now that the armor is done, let's reattach her head and cut and style her hair. I removed the fabric protecting her hair, then I heated the head up with my hairdryer to make it easier to get back on. I wanted her hair to be more wavy than curly, so I braided it in sections except for the bangs, and heated it all up with my hairdryer and let it sit until it was cool. Then I wet the hair for the bangs and smoothed it down with a clean toothbrush. I only use this one for doll stuff. Before I give them a chop and clean them up from there. I used the end of a rat tail comb to unravel the braids. When they're all loose, I start cutting the hair, starting at the front using the chin as a guide and working my way around the back. I also do some point cutting, which is when you cut straight upwards into the hair to add some texture and soften the blunt cuts a bit. Then I wrapped her head in plastic wrap to tame the poof and help it lay flat. I put together her base dress mostly off camera, and I cut the rest for time. It took me a while to figure out how to construct this on a small scale. I made the sleeves separate pieces, and used pleating to imitate the draping. The two sort of trailing strap pieces attached to the neck piece with snap fasteners. To imitate her rings, I superglued silver and pearl beads onto her hands. And I made a necklace out of silver thread and a sequin. While I was adding gloss to her lips, I noticed her left eye looked a little off to me. The iris was a little too big, so I touched it up with some acrylic ink. All she needs now is her armor, and she's done. I was really intimidated by this project. Not only because it was the first doll I was making based on a real person, well, her Met Gala look anyway, but also because of how much my last video took off. I didn't want to disappoint anyone. In the end, I think she lands somewhere in between the original as worn by Zendaya and Rachel Maxey's version, and I'm pretty happy with that. What do you all think? Is there any real people you'd like me to try making in doll form? Let me know in the comments down below. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram @StefFuDoll. Now that I'm done with this one, I'll be starting work on my 1K follower giveaway doll. I'll be sharing progress for that over on Instagram too, and I'll only be posting her video once a winner is already chosen. If you liked this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you want to see more from me, and do click that bell icon to get notified every time I upload a new video. Until next time, bye!